Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fancy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
All good? Monday morning?
I've just seen your score.
Yeah.
Where I am now.
To be honest, it's not like it's bad. It's 38. It's great, but I mean, I'm looking at yours. It's not exactly massively better, mate. 52.
I take 14 points over you every week, mate.
Yeah, true. But I think this was a good week to have a bad week, if you know what I mean. The spread between scores is very narrow.
I thought this week,
what's your rank?
Because of away fixtures, and this coming week would probably be lower scoring than what we've been used to.
Rank?
2.8 million.
8.4 million. So 14 points spreading 6 million places.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
You've got 3 million players and about 8 million robots now, haven't you?
That's also true. Having a better morning than Drake, mind. Did you see Drake?
No. I don't look into these things, Suj. But for the kids listening, do tell us.
Well, you know he was on the front of the Barcelona shirts yesterday. Oh,
with the Sheffield Wednesday sponsored El Clasico,
correct.
Didn't they? Yeah.
But he also decided to put a $833,000 bet on an Arsenal and Barcelona double. So Arsenal came in, but Barcelona didn't in the El Clasico. 833,000 Canadian dollars. I don't know how many Canadian dollars to the pound, mate.
Well, if you can afford it, you can afford it.
That's a fucking... And do you know what the returns were? Because he posted the screenshot of the bet.
Got to be a few mil.
No, on a double for Barca and Arsenal. I think it was like a 3,000... it wasn't a huge return. Put it that way. It wasn't enough that you'd be like, oh...
It must have got him a few mil, mate. Barca away to Real Madrid.
But Drake loses more than 800,000 betting on Arsenal-Barca.
Anyway, guys, we advise against gambling.
Oh, 3.9 million.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
3.9
We advise
million.
against remortgaging your house for bets and stuff like this.
I mean, it's as if he bet on Barca just because his logo was on the front of the shirt and he thought, fuck it, let me go put $1 million on it.
He's just done it to show off how much money he's got, hasn't he?
It's a madness. It's a madness. We're talking about FPL, though, here. And in terms of, like good week to have a bad week, I don't feel like the variance was there. I was looking at some of the points from the weekend. So I got points off Doherty, Pope and Trippier. And then literally a front seven, Maddison, Martinelli, Foden, Trossard, Zaha, Haaland and Wilson all blanking is just not normal, right? And Cancelo obviously was my other defender who didn't get me any points. I heard the above average boys yesterday. I was listening in the morning. Like I think one of the two of them, I can't remember which one, had just Pope and Trips, and that's it. No returns in the entire team.
I think Baker, but he's been smashing it this season. He's been doing
so
well.
How many players, James, this week scored more than 10 points or more in the entire game? Not FPL players, I mean actual football players.
As opposed to what?
Because I think everybody scored more than 10 points, you'd hope.
I don't know, 8?
11 players.
Okay.
How many of them had more than 10% ownership?
Trippier, Mitrovic, Tony. Is that it?
I think 3.
There you go.
3 players with more than 10% ownership in double-digit points, and that's it. So this week there just wasn't that many points to be had, right? I was thinking back to how the predictions we were talking about on Friday's show.
Saka as well. He got 9 Saka. Sorry.
9, so there you go.
Yeah.
And I think Kane was 8-9, something like that.
Kane was 9,
he would have been, if we dropped it to 9 players, 9 points, then it would have been a couple more. But literally nothing, right? I was just remembering the Manchester United Newcastle game yesterday, and the predictions we were doing, just like this: high scoring. United has scored 3 goals or more in every single game for the last 5 years, and then suddenly 0-0. Leicester Zaha, you're like Leicester Palace. Sorry, it wasn't Leicester versus Zaha. May as well have been. It was like they're both crap defensively. They're going to leak goals. There's going to be goals. 0-0. And on top of my 38 points on the pitch, James, I had 21 on the bench.
Yeah, who knew this was the week we all should have bench boosted?
Gahey, Mitrovic, Ward, Dunk. So I moved on Reece James. I went to Doherty in the end. I was trying to figure out where to go from Reece James, decided that I had to make a decision first on what team I wanted to go for rather than what player I wanted to go for. Looking at the fixtures for the next couple of weeks and what have you, I decided that Spurs was the team I wanted to go for. Then it became a debate of Eric Dyer versus Doherty. Dyer's reliability longer term versus Doherty short term, and decided that I'm going to eventually want to move it back to probably Saliba when after game week 13. So just go with the cheaper player with the higher upside was the decision I made, and then that ended up just by default being Doherty. So yeah, went with Doherty, returned obviously, and that was it. That was my moves.
So we bought the same player.
I played, you, me, and everybody on Twitter felt like.
It felt like everybody who was selling Reece James, which was obviously basically nearly everybody who owned, were buying either a Chelsea or a Tottenham defender, which is ironic when it's felt like a difficult week for a lot of people. That actually both those sides kept a clean sheet, so there were returns for the replacement in the majority of cases.
Yeah. Based on what Marco Silva said, I decided to play Wilson and bench Mitrovic and play Trossard. So benching Mitrovic, it was like...
I couldn't be having it, Suj.
I get it, but then also you look at my front line and it's...
No, I hear you. Yours is more difficult. You've really got 8. You haven't got... Suj hasn't got Andres Pereira, for example.
No fodder. So I decided that first sub, and the likelihood is maybe I might need him anyway. But then, Duncan Gahey getting clean sheets and Danny Ward getting a clean sheet was amazing. 21 on my bench, 38 points. But to be honest with you, it felt like not a bad week to have a bad week, because if like some weeks, if you're in the 70s and 80s and I'm in the 30s or 40s, that's a monster. But anything less than 15 points, it's manageable.
Builds up though if it becomes a couple of weeks in a row.
Don't get me wrong, it definitely does. But I'll take it this week and just move on from it, because I've got like 3 returns, and they're 3 defensive returns, and they're just all clean sheets and nothing else, right? No captaincy has gone off big. I mean, you could argue Salah maybe, but I don't know what his captaincy number was in the end. So wasn't a big one. And the players that kind of popped off, you're looking at your Solanke or Tony or David Raya.
The Dom.
Or Mason Mount, who's like 3% or something ridiculous. Low ownership. So overall, it wasn't too bad. I mean,
we started with the exact same backline this week. Double Newcastle, Doherty and Cancelo. We've got the exact same backline. I've beat you by 14 points effectively because I started Mitrovic.
And you got Solanke.
And I got Solanke, which, if you take away the appearance points, 15 extra points. Somewhere else, you've got 1 point more in your midfield than me.
Who knows? Martinelli's clean sheet. No, Zaha's clean sheet.
Probably, that's it. Yeah, there you go. On Mitrovic, the choice for me was never bench. I explained it on my stream in terms of saying, okay, what's worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is he comes on as a sub, gets half hour, they need a goal. And I explained it logically to say, would we expect over the course of a season Mitrovic to get 3 times more goals than Pereira? So would I expect Mitrovic in half hour to have as much chance of scoring a goal as Pereira in 90 minutes? And the answer was yes, it's close. So I decided to start because I couldn't be having that leaving him on the bench if he was in the team. And to be honest, when I saw his press conference on Friday, I too thought he wouldn't start. So I understand those that left him out. But I just, logically, for me, it was Mitrovic versus Pereira. I couldn't make that call. In your case, you'd have been leaving out, I mean, I don't know, Zaha or...
Trossard, probably.
Yeah.
Which in
I get it. I get it.
But, yeah, tough one. So, I mean, look, it's another game week. This one is interesting because it's such a fast turnaround now. Deadline again tomorrow, and then that's the blank. And then the interesting thing is going to be game week 13, and when we come out the other side, who's going to come out of it? A lot of people are going to be wildcarding. A lot of people are going to come out with more City or Arsenal than others, and they might be potentially good ones to look at. Definitely City. Now that they've obviously lost yesterday and have got ground to make up, they're going to, between now and the World Cup, they're going to be relentless, in my opinion, just to make sure that they close that gap and go into the World Cup top of the table within touching distance.
So come on then, how are you bust this week? I think this is a big debate that we need to go over because a lot of people are, should I take hits, where you at, how many players have you got blanking this week?
This is bust pre-subs, right? So I've got 4 players that don't have a fixture.
Yeah.
Cancelo, Foden, Haaland, Martinelli.
Technically,
3 City.
You've got 5.
And Maddison now is suspended. You as well, right?
Yeah, absolute.
You don't have any Arsenal left now, right?
I've got Martinelli.
Yeah, so you're the same as me.
Yes.
Except you've got De Bruyne instead of Foden.
Yes.
Correct. So Pope in goal, Trippier, Doherty, Gahey, Dunk, and Cancelo. Maddison, Trossard, Zaha, Mitrovic, Wilson. So I'm going to be needing to make 2 transfers to field.
So I think your
2 transfers to field 11.
9 that you have available is pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say. What's your intention on captaincy at the moment?
I've got it bust on Wilson.
Okay. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I've got it bust on Wilson, home fixture. They have been scoring goals, albeit they blanked at the weekend, but they have been scoring goals outside of that. Got it bust on Wilson.
What would it take you to put Mo Salah in your team?
So it'd be Maddison to Salah.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do it without getting rid of Haaland.
That's interesting.
I mean, I'd have to move. Even if I move Cancelo to the cheapest player in the game, I don't think I could do it.
I am going to get Salah. And to be honest, I don't want to. I don't want to because I'd rather spread the money and get to a position where I've got Saka, Foden, 2 players I don't have. I don't have Wilfried Zaha either. Get a 5 in midfield like that is where I'd like to go to. Whereas getting Salah doesn't make that happen. The key thing for me is I set the team up Friday night, and I think, like I just said to Suj, I'm looking at captaincy options this week. So, like with what I've got left, I'll just run you through where I'm at with my 9. So I've got Pope, Doherty, Trippier, Gahey, Emerson, 1-pointer at Liverpool, probably whether he starts or he doesn't start. Jared Bowen, expect nothing at Liverpool. Pereira, Mitrovic, Solanke. So my choices for captaincy with what I have right now is basically probably between Trippier, Mitrovic and Solanke. I actually have it bust on Kieran Trippier at the moment. I have Kevin De Bruyne. This is the difference between me and Suj. And I have money in the bank as well anyway, so there's no issue here. For me not to buy him is sticking to a principle that's wrong. For you, you've got to break up your team here. I think you've chosen your path in terms of you've got those mids at that price. You've got Zaha, I haven't got. You've got Foden, I haven't got. You've chosen that path. I have a path where I can get to him. And the problem was, set my bus team up Friday night after the deadline and was fairly convinced I'm going to captain James Maddison this week. And then the diving cheating bastard. And we gave him a lot of credit recently for his interviews, his on-field performances. Yeah. We have to say, no, mate, you cheated. You deserved the yellow card. And for me now, I look at, okay, I could buy Zaha, captain at home to Wolves. I could buy Trossard, who I think 90... That's not a sneeze, that's your phone ringing.
It is. Suspected spam as well.
That's a copyright strike. 95%, I would say Trossard starts. I don't think it's 100%. Do I want to get a Brighton attacker in? And then I'm walking into him away to Man City at the weekend, which of course I could then move that on to somebody else. Of course I could. I've got Solanke and Mitrovic. They're not moving. So I think Wilson is a very reasonable shout for captaincy this week. That's a no-go for me. So I've got access to what's going to be the most popular and the best available captaincy player this week. I'm being really, really stubborn if I don't buy him. If James Maddison got booked, I wouldn't have bought him.
Yeah.
I generally would have made one free transfer this week and I'd have got in a Zaha or a Trossard or someone like that and then moved it on. Now I'm looking at -4. So I've got money in the bank, De Bruyne to Salah, and I think once I've gone, I'm going to stay till the end, I think. There's just not enough weeks left for me to be thumping that where I go, I'm going to take a hit to remove Salah away to Forest or at home to Leeds. It doesn't make sense. Just doesn't make sense. So he's going to go in. He's going to stay in. James Maddison, I was looking, despite wanting to captain him this week, I was looking at moving him on in 13 anyway for a Saka or a Foden so he can go. The most likely player for me to buy at the moment very reluctantly, and I'll explain why reluctantly in a little bit when we talk about the games, he's probably going to be Wilfried Zaha. They do have the best fixtures from now until the World Cup. And he's another one where if he ends up having to stay there, fine. I think I'd rather that than, I'm stuck with Trossard and he's got Man City and Chelsea in the next two. So I think Zaha's going to be the choice. This is going to be a really, really scrappy week. On free hits, because I know there'll be people listening who've got like 6 Man City and Arsenal, and perhaps got the Maddison problem now as well. That's going to put them down to 6 players or so. I still wouldn't free hit. I'd only consider it if it's 5 or lower, I think. It's going to be so much more valuable at the end of the season. The other, even more important thing, I think, the number of players this week is exactly what I've just said. Is shit anyway.
Yep.
Like, do I expect Mo Salah to tear it up against West Ham? No. It's a difficult fixture. Tottenham and Manchester United play each other. Chelsea's going to be a rotation headache at Brentford on Wednesday. I'm fairly convinced about that. So what's great with the fixtures, we steaming into Fulham at home to Villa or Bournemouth at home to Southampton. Yeah, sure, we can buy our Phil Billings and stuff like this. But, okay, Newcastle got the best of it at home to Everton, arguably. But most of us you've got 3 already, right? So what is there to go to? Most people be free hitting, yeah, they will go 3 Newcastle. Chances are you've probably already got 2.
Yep.
Guess you've got at least 1. If you don't, that's where I'd go and buy this week, by the way. He's Newcastle in the first instance. But most people have got a midfield issue to sort out, and the Newcastle midfield options ain't great. Okay, we can buy Almiron cheap. Is it punty? Yeah. It may also be a problem down the road. Gomes might be a fitness doubt. We think he's probably okay. But is that what we're going into? Doesn't really make sense. So I wouldn't free hit this week. Primarily, beyond how many players you've got, the fixtures are shit. I'm really, really confident this isn't going to be a high-scoring week. This is just to get through it and get on the other side. And so therefore as well, take me with Emerson. This is a good example because people will have stronger players than Perisic, who are than Emerson, who would debate. Perisic is one as an example. I got Emerson. He started for you yesterday. You changed system, back 3. You had issues, centre-backs.
Correct.
Okay. Now, we don't know the time of recording what the situation is for Wednesday, but also, does it matter? He either starts and probably gets me 1 point, whoever probably comes off the bench and gets me 1 point. So if I take a -4 hit to get him in, bearing in mind I've got Doherty, Cancelo and Trippier, so that's the first choice 3, and good coverage in Gahey. Whoever I get in for Emerson has to get me a clean sheet. And the only one I'd be really confident right now is Newcastle. I don't really want to go to treble Newcastle. And I think even the likes of Botman could even be a rotation risk this midweek, for example. Dan Burns, another one. Fabian Schär might have picked up an issue at United yesterday. Where am I going? So I think Emerson stays. I'm hearing a lot of people, should I take a -4 to get rid of Perisic? Great example. Why? He might even finish the game in the front 3. Do you massively, if I said to you now, even Perisic is going to start Old Trafford, do you have huge expectations for that anyway?
Not huge. No.
And if you take the -4, where are you going defensively this week? The 2 teams you probably want to go to most haven't got a game. And it might be that Perisic played well enough on Saturday, and he did play well. There's a caveat to that, which we'll talk about later, which is Everton, essentially, that he could even stay in the team. Like, I think Sessegnon will start. But I wouldn't be shocked if the teams come out and I'm at Old Trafford and Perisic is in the team. Particularly now with Richarlison out, and it means there's more onus on the wing-backs to be even higher, because I'm sure Bissouma will start now. So Perisic could even stay in the team. So I think -4s are for people like me in the situation where I've got 9, I'm not desperate for the 11, but in my case, I'm selling Maddison, and the plan was always to get rid of Maddison on the weekend anyway. Also, he's going to be steaming out in terms of transfers. He's probably going to hit a price drop tonight, I should imagine. So I've built up 0.4. I'll nick the 0.2 on him, move it on.
Okie doke.
So I think for me, it's worth it. For many of you, if you've got 9 or 10 players this week, I wouldn't stress about it. But Mo, although I don't think he'll go big this week, he has the capability to shatter everything I've built up in the last 4 weeks or so. And if I've got Kevin De Bruyne there and I'm looking at it and going, I've I've got 2.8 million in the bank, Kevin De Bruyne in my team, and I'm going to buy Zaha and Trossard rather than buy Mo Salah. I'm just being stubborn, aren't I?
Yeah,
it's the reality. So I think for me, he's got to come in.
To be honest, I've got Maddo is my problem, and I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to move Maddison on and go into it with 10.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And
you don't want to get rid of any of your Arsenal City. It's easier for me to move De Bruyne because I knew that I wanted to
huge as well.
A, for Salah, and B, the idea for me originally anyway was to move that to someone this week and then be able to get probably Foden in for Pereira going into this weekend.
Yeah,
was the plan.
Because you want a hokey cokey with De Bruyne to Foden anyway, so it's like a daisy chain. I'm torn though at the moment with going to Mount. I think is great price at the moment at 7.7. He's delivering the goods as well in this Graham Potter team, and the problem with that though is what you mentioned about potentially Chelsea rotating midweek, but Mount is always one of those that's always around.
Mount is the only outfield player who started every game under Potter so far.
So depending on the narrative you want to spin, he's due a rest. So
yeah,
or he's locked.
Exactly. Do you spin it and say, well, he's due to rest, or do you spin it and go, well, he won't play without him? So it's. I would suggest that with the fixtures they've got coming up, bearing in mind they've just played Sunday, they'll play Wednesday. They've got Manchester United Saturday night. They've got Champions League Tuesday. In Salzburg, that somewhere in there he's not playing, or he's not starting, and Brentford seems the logical one, doesn't it?
The alternative is,
and their last 4 fixtures are tough. It's worth saying. They've got United, Arsenal, Newcastle, and Brighton are their 4 fixtures. So
no, I mean they're a good team though, mind right? The alternative is to smash down to Pereira, bank the money, and then coming out of it into game week 13, look at like powering in. But the thing is, like, where am I going to power into? It's going to be Arsenal because I've already got 3 City, and it's like Saka's the most expensive one. Jesus,
if you moved Maddison and Foden
this week,
could that get you Salah?
I'm not sure it could. No, I don't think it could.
Because I presume you haven't got that much built up in Phil Foden.
No, I haven't.
Not enough to think, I can't sell him anyway.
I bought him at 8.1. He's 8.3.
Yeah.
And he's likely to go down, right?
There's every chance he may take a dip. He probably won't, actually. But listen, you can sell for 8.2. You can buy him back at 8.3. It's not enough to make you think, I can't sell him. The others are more difficult.
No. If I go to...
I know a few people will be
6.6.
thinking, Haaland to Kane, for example. Like you can't maneuver it to go like a Haaland to Wilson and then a Maddison to Salah, for example, because then what you're doing about Haaland come the weekend, you're just reversing it. It feels like a lot. But I've seen a few people go Kane for 1 week. One, I don't think the fixtures is enough to make you think that Harry will haul at Manchester United. 2, the value most of you will have built up in Haaland is too big. For those of you who have come on very late, yeah, sure. Go Harry for a week and come back off. For people like me and you, Suj, who've owned him since day one, I can't sell him when I know 100% I want him back. If Harry had, I don't know, Forest at home this week or something, and he was the clear, obvious, definitive captaincy, for example, then there's more of an argument. For Manchester United away, I don't think there is.
If I bought Pereira, it'd still leave me a couple of million in the bank.
You'd still be short.
No. It'd leave me a couple of million in the bank. So
you can't get up from the other one to Salah.
Foden and Maddison.
Yeah.
To Salah and Pereira.
Yeah.
Works. Or even 6.6 I'd have instead of Pereira.
So you can do it.
Yeah.
I think you should consider it.
I'd captain Salah on that point.
I'm not saying you should do it because your structure has gone this way now and I understand it. How much would you have in the bank? Could you go like Trossard to Foden at the weekend?
Yeah.
I think you should do it then, mate.
I'd go Trossard to Foden and probably have enough money to do Wilson to Jesus. And I want to get to Saliba.
It just means you'll be in a position like me where you're probably not going to be able to get the Foden and Saka. And I would like to desperately to have both, but it's just not going to happen.
Yep, agreed. Let's talk about these games from the weekend, shall we? Starting with Friday night football. And Brighton fans, £25,000, please, because I bought Leandro Trossard 2 weeks ago and he's blanked 2 weeks in a row. So the curse is back.
Do you think he's captainable this week? Just interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Just
at any time,
if you feel
right?
like it.
Yeah, I mean it's Forest. They haven't been great, Nottingham Forest, have they? So, I think he is perfectly captainable.
Yeah, there'll be certainly some that are considering who are on this, say, no Mo route, for example.
They're at home, aren't they, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah. So then I think perfectly captainable.
I'd be very, very surprised if he didn't start, but I do think there is a small amount of doubt. I didn't think he played particularly well on Friday. They changed system. Both teams changed system, which was really surprising. So, obviously, Aaron Hickey wasn't available for Brentford, and I think that probably locked in Brentford going for a back four, which, once again, proved to be better for Ivan Toney. But Brighton also played a back four, and we didn't really see that coming. The research I'd done on De Zerbi suggested that he favoured a back four. And it may be that, reflecting on it, he's looked at Liverpool and Tottenham and gone, because of the attacking threat of those two, I better stay with a back three. So it might be that the back four now sticks, possibly. And you've got, therefore, be Veltman most commonly at right back, Duncan Webster, and probably still Estupiñán at left back. But as we saw at the weekend, on Friday night, March started at right wing and he finished the game at left back, which is exactly how he played against Tottenham, other than it was right wing back in the first half against Tottenham. So Solly March gives Estupiñán a little bit of threat. Also, Karu Mitoma, who came on against Tottenham and looked fantastic on the left wing, he does give Trossard a little bit of potentially, let's say, a rotation concern. We don't know if De Zerbi's going to rotate or not, right? We've got nothing to tell us if he's just going to go, that's the same 11, or, it's Forest at home and we've got Man City on Saturday, I might rotate. We generally don't know. So could he play Mitoma at left wing against Forest? I think that's a small possibility. I did not like how they used him when they brought him on. They put him on the right.
And you don't think...
he was just coming into traffic all the time.
Lamptey's any threat for Veltman at right
I think
back?
Possibly, yeah. I think Colwill is a small potential problem for Webster. I'd be very, very surprised about that. But yeah, we've got nothing to say that he doesn't go, I'm going to play Adam Lallana at home to Forest instead of Gross, for example. Now, this isn't to say you should get rid of any of these Brighton players. You absolutely should not ahead of this fixture. It's just to say that if you're thinking of taking a hit for one of these guys, we've got nothing from De Zerbi to know whether he's going to rotate or not. Absolutely nothing. And the fixture says you can rotate, doesn't it? No, I don't think you will, but it's off-putting a little bit. So if I'm thinking of taking the -4, and effectively, as I know I'm going De Bruyne to Salah, the -4 effective for me is 1 week, possibly, for the player I bring in. Do I want to bring Trossard in? Have I got enough confidence?
Nah.
I don't think I have. And at least with, say, Zaha as an alternative, if I'm stuck with Zaha for a while, the fixtures tell me, okay, I'm stuck with Zaha for a while with the fixtures. So I've gone a bit cold on Leandro Trossard. I didn't think he played particularly well on Friday night. That said, the score was harsh on Brighton. They largely played quite well. Tony scored a brilliant goal. Joel Veltman had a night where he just wanted to row with Tony all night, and it was a penalty. They had 82% possession in the second half, Brighton.
That's mad. But unsurprising, but yeah, get that.
And on a different night, David Rowe, who had a bit of a stinker at Newcastle the week before, performed very, very well in goal. Was probably close to matching Tony for man of the match. So not a drama. It felt like, and I spoke about this after they lost to us, a little bit overdoing it. But actually, they had chances. Just Raya made some really good saves in the game. So I don't think it was a disaster result for Brighton. Their away form since April has been absolutely fantastic. The headline here is Tony. Difficult game, obviously, this week against Chelsea. I don't think we'd put him in the kind of captaincy contention, would we, Suj? Home to Chelsea, can we?
No. The likelihood is that you will have a better option in your team. If you don't, I don't think it's unthinkable to captain him because of the penalties and it's a home fixture. But the likelihood is you will have a better option in your squad.
You know when Tony's missing his first penalty, don't you?
Yeah. Where you tweeted the World Cup, isn't it, for England in a shootout?
World Cup quarter-final. Although as a few correctly said back to me, you actually think I'm going to get to a quarter-final? No, not convinced necessarily. He'd definitely go to the World Cup, in my opinion. I've said that weeks ago when we did the podcast. He would be first choice backup to Harry for me in terms of physical number 9. The problem is we don't know if the back four sticks or not. No idea. Tony's in my consideration for the weekend, rather than the midweek as such, because the fixtures coming up are pretty decent. And Solanke, the boy, is probably expendable for me come the weekend. The plan was always 4 games. The 4th game is the weekend. I'll potentially have the money in the bank to move to Tony at the weekend should I want to. Villa, Wolves, Forest is a very reasonable next 3 before they go to the Etihad in the final game. And I think for me it would be 3 weeks, and can I take a 1-week punt for someone in game week 16 right at the end is a possible. Tony's on my radar potentially for the weekend. I think the thing is, I'm probably going to have a more priority to want to get Foden or Saka at the weekend than get Tony. But if Zaha impresses me tomorrow night, if that's the way I go, then I might look at Tony as an option for the weekend.
I think he's a decent shout for the 3. Is Villa, Forest, Wolves, isn't it? I think the 3.
2 of them away.
Yeah.
And then Man City away is the last one as well.
Yeah, but I think at that point, people just give me this unlimited transfers period. It's interesting because I've been looking at getting back to Jesus, and I also want Saliba and Martinelli, and also want Saka. So there's 4 Arsenal assets there that are decent, and they've got others that are decent as well. If I decided to go with Tony and just bin off Jesus, then it puts Saka back on the table for me as potentially Martinelli, Saka, and Saliba as the 3 Arsenal. And Tony gives the option of making that the trio rather than Jesus, Martinelli, and Saliba. And I quite like that, but I'm not in the business of taking too many hits to try and get to Ivan Toney. And if I'm going to delay it by a week, these fixtures are going to be gone. So there's kind of no point in ends up being something worth doing.
The problem with Jesus, and a lot of people laughed at Adam Pritchard in the summer where he said he wanted to go Saka instead of Jesus. It's beginning to look like that's right. He's on Jesus rather than Saka now, I believe. I don't know if he's on Saka as well. But the concern with Jesus, of course, is yellow cards. And I think it's worth quickly just shouting out players, just by remembering players on 4 yellows that might be of considerations to people. So William Saliba obviously doesn't play this week, but you mentioned him as one to potentially come in for you, and I've thought similar. He's on 4 yellows now. Diogo Dalot, Manchester United, might get some interest. He's on 4 yellows. Ramsey at Villa, Bruno Fernandes, probably not going to get any interest. Decordova Reid at Fulham. Jesus is on 4. You know who else is on 4?
Tony.
Ivan Toney. So he might even be in for a suspension soon himself as well. So if I'm going to put myself in that position, do I go for Jesus or do I go for Tony? I'd probably go for Jesus.
None of the above.
Or look elsewhere. There is another player who's strongly in my consideration I'll mention later on as well. But yes, be aware, he's on 4 yellow cards as well.
Let's move to Saturday's games. Leicester 0, Palace 0.
Talking of yellow cards, segue. Mate, I had, as soon as it happened, let me get on Twitter, I just got to see the rage from everyone. Yeah, it was rage moment of the weekend. Yeah. You've ruined my game week 12 plans. So many people's had their plans absolutely torn up for midweek by this yellow card. What I just never understand with it, it's like, okay, if you con the referee, that there's no way that VAR's given that.
Yeah.
You've clearly tried to initiate the contact. There's no way you're getting a pen for it. So there's some who will say, well, look, it's last minute of the game. At least he did it in the 93rd minute rather than the 3rd minute where his desperation is coming to try and win the game for his team. But actually, his team needs him just as much in midweek. So they'll find Leeds difficult. I would not be surprised if Leeds go to Leicester and win in midweek. And that really, really could be curtains if that's the case. Maddison will be a big miss for them in midweek. Which does, as many people are looking for midfielders at the moment, does possibly bring in the idea of Harvey Barnes, I guess is a player that some will be considering. 6.9 at the moment and looked pretty lively, actually, at the weekend. It should be said, and I mentioned this about Zaha last week, I think Christensen, we was expecting was going to be this really offensive fullback at Leeds. Actually, defensively, he's quite well. He's done quite well. I had a look at the left-sided players against Leeds this season. The only one who's scored is Anthony Gordon. He's played against Martinelli. He's played against Zaha and these players. They haven't scored against Leeds. Anthony Gordon's the only one who's played on the left and scored against Leeds this season. So if that's potentially something that might put Barnes owners off. That said, with Maddison out the team, he might take the initiative and set up. There'll be worse 1-week punts than Harvey Barnes.
Yep.
I would say. It's worth remembering they come into Man City in a couple of weeks. They got the weekend, Wolves away, isn't it? I think so. Their last 4 before the World Cup after this week, they've got 3 away, and Manchester City is the only home game. So I don't know how much that would appeal. But for 1 week, yeah, I don't mind Harvey Barnes. Having watched Leicester's last few games, if people want to go in defensively, it's definitely Castagne over Justin now. He's worth a little bit more. Obviously, where Maddison, and this might be different, ironically, against Leeds at the weekend, Maddison obviously just wants to come off the right, get involved, and it's real responsibility for Castagne to say hi, and Justin tucks in like almost not quite like a third centre-back, but he doesn't go forward in the same way that Castagne does. He kind of just stays and supports Harvey Barnes on that side. So I think as long as it's affordable, Castagne over Justin would be the right play. If you really, really want to buy a Leicester defensive player, which I think, to be honest, if I was free hitting this week, I think I'd put Castagne in probably. I'd probably chance that because it could be big. They have kept 2 clean sheets in the last 2 home games. Mm-hmm. Well done. Danny Ward, I think, now has more FPL points than Bazunu. I don't know if that tells you more about Southampton, which you can tell us a bit about in a little bit, Suj.
They haven't kept a clean sheet in 16 in the Premier League. I learned yesterday in the commentary.
Thank you for that statistic. I
love when you learn things in commentary. Like, okay, I'm going to use that one.
1 week punts. What about Yuri Tielemans? 6.3. If Vardy doesn't start, he's the pen taker, isn't he?
Yeah. I just feel like you're setting yourself up for a problem further down the road. Like it's just a transfer out now. And I get we're now narrowing down the week. It's only like 4 game weeks or 5 game weeks until we get the unlimited. So if you put yourself in a situation, you're going to be able to unwind it pretty soon. But it's not like Sky Fantasy Football, for example, where there's no price changes and price fluctuations. There are going to be. You might lose a bit of value in it if it doesn't work out. I'm not keen on Leicester. I'd be more keen to go to Zaha or a Palace asset just because their fixtures all the way up to the World Cup are still decent.
Yes, they are. However, this is going to be a really, really unusual one for me, I think, because there is nothing I've seen with my eyes that makes me want to buy Wilfried Zaha. The only thing that makes me want to buy Wilfried Zaha is the fixtures. So this system is not working for him. They're playing with 2 midfielders a little bit higher up the pitch. They're basically playing 4-1-4-1 where Doucouré is a lot deeper. Think about City when they play with like De Bruyne and another one really high, and the 2 wide players, so like Mahrez and Foden, really hold the touchline, for example. City's dominance is so big that Foden, certainly Mahrez will hold on the right as an example. Foden will get involved. Zaha is not getting involved. This system, I spoke about it last week, is one too many cooks. It's not working for him. Now, that said, he's got Wolves at home this week. Wolves will be a little bit stronger for bringing Nathan Collins back into the team. So, yes, those who are buying Toti Gomez at 3.9, that's not the signing you want this week, by the way. So, can he return? He's on the penalties. They've got good fixtures, yes. But my expectation on him is much lower than when I wanted to buy him a couple of weeks ago. Because this system, he's holding the touchline too much. If you look at his heat map, and I tweeted this on Saturday night, his heat map with Tyreek Mitchell, who's not an offensive fullback, is a defensive fullback, they don't look very different. And that's a concern. Because you want Wilfried Zaha top end, don't you? And Leicester had enough domination of this game. Leicester arguably should have won, in my opinion, that counter-attacking opportunities were there for Crystal Palace on turnovers. And they didn't utilise him properly. I don't think they're playing particularly great at the moment. I think they started really sluggishly against Leeds. They started sluggishly at the weekend. I think they'd be better off at the moment putting one more defensive player in the team to play alongside Doucouré would help the offensive guys. Even if that means they don't play Elise and they play Eze as a more nominal 10, for example. If you look again at the weekend, whether you're watching the game or you look at heat maps or anything, to see Eze in a higher position than Zaha is not right. It's not working for him at the moment. And yet I might still buy him.
Yeah, you never know.
Because of the fixtures. Eze, I wouldn't have interest in. Elise obviously didn't start the weekend. I wouldn't have interest in. There's a lot of people been asking, can we save the money? Can we save the money? I don't think so, is the honest answer. I don't think they're worth going to. Remember, in Eze's case as well, he's obviously had serious injuries. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't start tomorrow night. Elise, I would imagine, comes back in. Elise feels like he's got favouritism over Ayew if they go back to more of, say, a 4-2-3-1. Elise tends to get favouritism in some of these more attractive home games. Will Elise start every game between now and the World Cup? I highly doubt it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Eze doesn't either. Zaha will, I'm fairly sure. But on what I've seen, and originally thinking a week ago, I might captain him at home to Wolves, that doesn't feel right. So I probably am going to buy him, but don't have much confidence in it. I've got to be honest.
Let's talk about Fulham and Bournemouth 2-2. Desmond. We predicted a few Desmonds. This one wasn't one that was predicted as a Desmond, but we got one at least. Mitrovic, Pereira, Solanke, Billing, these are the players that have any kind of ownership within the game, and they all returned. Solanke's still 5.8. I know you're talking about coming off him now and Bournemouth's run is done and what have you, but at that price, though, he's still a solid enabler. If it allows you to do other things within your team, I think Solanke's still decent at 5.8.
He's now up to the point which Neil Grover told us would happen in pre-season, that he would have 50% goal involvement. Now, at the moment, doing quite well. I think the fixtures stiffen up a little bit is part of the point. Like, once you've got beyond Southampton, and I'd expect them to beat Southampton at the moment, it's West Ham away, Tottenham at home. Do you want to look at Dominic Solanke for those fixtures? Okay, fine. West Ham away is not terrible. Even Tottenham at home is not terrible. But there are alternative options, if affordable, that are definitely better. Solanke, for me, was a 4-game punt, with Southampton being the last of them. And I told you, I want 16 points. He's got me 22 with 1 to go. Absolutely delighted with his returns. And he looked lively at the weekend. I really like him as a player, as a forward. He's a good focal point. He can play on his own. He can play in a pair. I think they played it. They played a diamond in a game recently. Home game they drew. Brentford, wasn't it? But they played more up front with him and they played with a diamond. It didn't work. Since then, this team looks like it's settled now in a 4-2-3-1. It now looks like Jordan Zamora, who I think was the Bournemouth defensive one to potentially look at, is not in the team now. Philip Billing is playing high. And despite me saying a couple of weeks ago that I'd probably rather save the money on Tavernier, I think that's probably incorrect. And you probably would go for Billing now, because he really, as proven by the first goal, he really is getting up in support for Solanke. They're doing great, right? They're unbeaten since the Liverpool 9-0, mate.
Correct.
It's great. Manager's got to get the job, hasn't he? As soon as they appoint him, they'll lose like 8 in a row, don't you?
Yeah, this is it. Keep while it's working as a temporary caretaker manager.
Just carry on.
I remember Ole, right? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Yeah.
As soon as they appoint him permanently, that's it. The wheels
sack him 6
off.
weeks later, wasn't it?
Yeah. Thoughts to add anyone to Mitrovic and Pereira? I mean, they're the two standouts from Fulham, aren't they? Really?
No, I'd tell you what. There's some sympathy for those who might have gone out of Rabio, because that was. Of all the team lineups at the weekend, that was probably the one where I saw him. Where is he? He must literally thought he must be ill or something. Yeah. Nope, sub. Diop in. So I don't know if...
And he scored?
He did score, yeah. Strange goal, ended up shouldering it in. I presume that he's possibly now got favouritism over Adebayo. That said, it could be that it was something tactically either for Solanke, or they targeted it as a game where they thought they could get minutes into Diop. I wouldn't go into Diop. Robinson, if you decide Fulham is the way to go, 4.4. With Villa's offensive record, it's not a terrible idea, I think, to have a Fulham defensive player this week. That said, they've got no clean sheets themselves since game week 2, which was away to Wolves. So you wouldn't have huge expectation on them. Pereira ticks over absolutely fine. And it's that as well. You look at it on structurally and I go, yes, I want a midfield of Foden, Saka, Bowen, those kind of price players, Martinelli and one more. He's doing nothing wrong for me.
Yeah, there's no other
He's still got good fixtures. He's a perfect first sub.
There's no forward at that price that's going to be an enabler in the way that Pereira is. And you'd argue something defensively, there's not that much available at that price as well.
No, and I think there's more forwards that are interesting me at kind of $1 million cheaper than the 8 million mids. There's a few that's kind of 6.5, 7 that are quite interesting at the moment. But yeah, I mean, playing Pereira this week's absolutely fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in your case, it might even be the right to go back to him structurally, possibly. I think it's something you should give consideration. Mitrovic has said, for me, I had to play him in my circumstance. It was him versus Pereira. in your case, it was him versus Trossard or Zaha.
Wilson.
I can completely understand why you left him out. I think there's possibly a lesson in there, though. The other thing is, I saw people saying on Friday he hasn't trained for 2 weeks. If you're the star man at Fulham, it's not like being the star man at Chelsea or Tottenham or Arsenal or whatever. Tottenham's a bad example because Kane would just play. It's a bad example. You know what I mean?
Get that injection in you, son.
Whereas there's certain clubs, is that we need you to get on the pitch. Yeah. So like, he's obviously their most important player. They were always more liable to take a risk with him than perhaps would have happened at other clubs. And 2 weeks of no training is not as bad for a forward as it is, particularly someone like him and his style, as it would be, say, for a midfield player or a fullback or something like that. So, yeah, it's hindsight, but I started him for a reason.
Wolves
penalty was dodgy.
Soft.
I would say that, though, yeah. But he had plenty of efforts in the second half as well. They had a lot of the ball second half. 73% they had in the second half. There was some mad possession numbers at the 73% second half for Fulham against Bournemouth. I understand that. Bournemouth obviously had the lead for long periods and retreated. I can understand that. Got a settled team now, Bournemouth, and we have to start saying, look, they're doing all right.
They're doing well. Wolves 1, Nottingham Forest 0. Forest now bang in trouble. Well, they were already before this weekend. I had this down as a 0-0. Wolves did nick it. Penalty as well. Again, penalty missed at the other end. So could have gone the other way. There's a lot of missed penalties this weekend. Thinking about Leeds and that. Not a lot, but a few.
I saw one scored.
Yeah, you did.
Yes, this could have gone the other way.
Are you talking about just that he just scored or just won it?
Well, Pickford got fingers on it. Yeah, okay, he went down easy. It's a penalty. Like, I'll say if it's not a penalty, it's a penalty. These two were, they're very debatable penalties as well. It sounds like Wolves weren't good, Forest were worse. Seems to be, and I think these two's league's position sums it up at the moment. For Forest, I have this nagging feeling that at some point they'll have a run. I just think, I feel Bournemouth are really benefiting from having a settled team at the moment and a manager that's stripped back the limitations, if you will, of parkable, as Bournemouth fans would have not so lovingly called it, and give these players a bit of confidence. With Forest, Cooper still doesn't know what he wants to do with the team, does he? And he's not helped by certain people like Niakate is apparently still quite a way away. I think centre-back is a major issue. I think Cook and McKenna are average, if I'm totally honest. Loddy came in for a few games. He's been back out. Toffolo has defensive weaknesses at left-back. Aurea came in against Villa. He's now apparently injured again, so you've probably got Nico Williams if you're an owner at Brighton tomorrow night, but you've got no expectation. A little bit more solid with this change over the last 2 games to a 4-3-3. I think Emmanuel Dennis is probably going to lock down first choice, but I feel like he'd be more beneficial to them in a wide area where he can go and run at people. It's been like what I've seen so far is looking a bit isolated and stuff. I think it's best for Watford is when we've seen him be able to face people up and run at them. So I'd like to see him play in a wide position, whether it was left or right for them. I think Brennan Johnson arguably wants to come out the team. He's missed the penalties. It can happen to anyone. But I think he's not going to get the attacking returns that they'd hoped. And they need to consider probably having Gibbs White as a playmaker, Dennis as a winger, and probably back to sort of Awoniyi up front, I think. Makes them look a little bit more threatening, I would say, at the top end of the pitch. But I do have this suspicion that at some point, and it might not be till after the World Cup, that they'll have a run. I wouldn't write them off yet, that's what I'd say. I think that team's still settling, and they might click and get something right at some stage. For Wolves, the problem's going to be scoring goals. I mentioned it earlier about Toti Gomez, is 3.9. He started the last couple. Nathan Collins' suspension is over. I am 99% certain he will come back into the team against Crystal Palace in midweek. It's not impossible that Gomez could stay in the team if they played in a back three. I think that's very, very unlikely. We think Rayan Aït-Nouri might have picked up an injury at the weekend. So it's probably Johnny Moose to left back, Nelson Semedo, cousin of Nico, plays at right back and has to go up against Zaha. And it is worth saying that Nelson Semedo is a player we've criticised a lot. He has been better over the, let's say, 2022. I think the player to watch at Wolves, and I wouldn't say buy, but positionally now, I think the right solution for them is Núñez behind Costa. Is the right solution for them with what they've got fit. And I think he's a player to keep an eye on. Am I recommending buying a Wolves attacking player? No. I'd more likely recommend go and get a Crystal Palace defensive player. Mark Gay is on the verge of that rise I've been promising for a while.
They're up to 4 goals this season, so, progress. And it is 3 points and they're out of the relegation zone.
Second half goal, their first second half goal of the season.
Wow. Silver linings and all that. Spurs 2, Everton 0. Now, I'll tell you a team who weren't going to score a goal in a second half yesterday. I'm sure I saw that they had an XG of 0.0 in the second half against you.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's... I wouldn't say it's unheard of. It probably is. Is it the first time it's ever happened in a game?
No, it's happened loads of times.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
You don't have a shot, you're at 0.0 XG.
Not great, is it?
It's not great when you're chasing the game, no. And particularly considering, as I'd spoke to you late last week, the vulnerabilities we had against Frankfurt, you think, if you can get it into that area. But I think the second goal killed them.
Yep.
Where what they were trying to do was stay in the game, get to that point where they were 5 minutes behind with only one down, and then you hope Tottenham get deep enough and you can start throwing the thing in the box a little bit with Calvert-Lewin on the pitch. The second goal killed it. It's worth saying in the first half, Suj, they had a couple of really good breakaways with Gray and Onana particularly.
Yeah.
Christian Romero, who I've seen getting a lot of love from Tottenham fans on social media. Watching different games to me. He's not playing well at the moment. I love him. I mean, he's a splendid centre-back. But that Onana chance happens because he has a brain fart. He can't help himself. He has to go in. We have to accept him for what he is. That he has to go in and be aggressive, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it can cost. And if Everton had been in front at half time, I couldn't have complained because they had the 2 biggest chances of the half. I think they made it very difficult for us in the first half. I think obviously once we go in front, that obviously helps. The change of game obviously happened from the system change to 3-5-2. So I certainly wouldn't call it a Conte masterclass because unless Richarlison had got injured, I'm not sure that he would have done it. I think he looked at the bench and went, Lucas Moura's not ready for 35 minutes here yet. I'm going to go Bissouma again. And what it does, it's weird because it makes us look more negative on paper. You're going Bissouma, Højbjerg, Bentancur. It's more negative. But actually, it's almost
more... It allows
more,
the fullbacks to bomb on. It's not, is it?
But also Højbjerg and Bentancur play higher. So Bentancur's assisted Højbjerg for the second goal. It's impossible if Bissouma's not on the pitch.
Yep.
No way. There's no way that those 2 players make the run. Kane even encourages Bentancur to make the run on the outside, and Højbjerg bursts in. And the 2 of them are playing so well at the moment. A lot of people say, why is Bissouma not playing more? Well, the number one reason is we normally play with 3 up front, and Højbjerg and Bentancur have been very, very good for Tottenham this season. And Bissouma actually, I would say, hasn't been outstanding when he has had minutes. He underwhelmed when he had the chance against yourselves in Gameweek 5, but was very good when he came on at the weekend and, yes, had an influence on the game. So Højbjerg and Bentancur, Højbjerg, interestingly, really odd stat, he's actually got an attacking return in his last 5 home Tottenham games.
Oh, wow.
Includes Champions League games.
Still.
There's 5 home games in a row. He's actually got an attacking return. Please don't buy Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. We're also away this midweek, I should say. But there is reason to expect, if this system sticks, that Højbjerg and Bentancur may get further forward. Now, I was always of the thought process that we play 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, depending on how you want to determine it, at Old Trafford this week anyway. Bit more control. I think the Brighton game made him realise that in some of these more difficult games, particularly away from home, you want to try and get control. The system allows us to be in a position where we could go to Old Trafford and we could have the majority of the ball. It's not to say it will happen, but certainly our control of the game was much better at the weekend. That second half, we controlled the game. You can say Everton were poor, fine, but our control of the game, the way we kept the ball was really good second half. Bissouma does allow that. On the wing backs, Actually, before I do the wing backs, will the system stick as in 3-5-2? As I've said to a few people, it's dependent on opponent and it's dependent on personnel. So Richarlison, we don't know the injury prognosis, but the fact that he was supposedly crying in the tunnel afterwards suggests probably a World Cup doubt, right? So I don't think he's going to be back for Newcastle, for example. Conte said he definitely wouldn't be available for United. He's obviously done some damage. Kulusevski, I wouldn't expect to start at Manchester United. Now, he might be back by Newcastle. Now, if Kulusevski is back and available and ready to start for Newcastle, he might. But I think Newcastle is another game where you could look at it and go, yeah, okay, I'll go to 3 in midfield because he knows Newcastle will play a 3 in there and match it up. And you've just got Kane and Son obviously going against their 2 centre-backs. So I think the opponent and available personnel is what's important. If Kulusevski and Richarlison are both out to the World Cup, Tottenham will play this system in every game. If Kulusevski's back, it will change back because he's too important to Tottenham. He's our most creative player. He's our best ball carrier. He's so important to the way we play in the front 3. So I think the solution for Tottenham is, without Kulusevski, play 3 in midfield. If he's available against certain opposition, you go back to it. Kane and Kulusevski as a 2 doesn't really work. You need Son's pace. Son and Kulusevski as a 2 doesn't really work. You still need Kane and all the strengths that he brings. So I think the 3 in midfield will last, subject to Kulusevski's availability. It may last through both of these 2 games. That does make, I think, Son a more interesting option. Because obviously he'll go right through the middle beyond Harry Kane. So when Harry drops in short, he'll make the run and go. He's been very good the last week, Heung-min Son. He was good again on Saturday. He was outstanding against Frankfurt in the Champions League last week. The wing backs. So one of the questions I had prior to kickoff is, because I'd said I thought it would be Perisic, Doherty, and I thought at Old Trafford it would be Doherty and Sessegnon, and against Newcastle probably Sessegnon and Emerson when he's back from suspension. One of the questions I had prior to kickoff was, if Perisic plays well, can he stay in the team? Well, yeah, obviously. But
you don't pick the team. This is.
I think the 3 in midfield gives certain scope to Perisic playing because he's a better. I'm going to say an all-round threat. Let's say in terms of output, in terms of goals and assists, he's more likely to have a bit more than Sessegnon. Sessegnon is much better defensively, much better. Does Conte want reality? Does he want Perisic going up against Antony on Wednesday night? I suspect probably not. So I think Sessegnon will start at Old Trafford. Will I be surprised if Perisic plays? No. Should you take a -4 to get rid of him? No. What does it mean for Sunday against Newcastle? Hands up right now, I'm not sure. Is the honest answer. Doherty did absolutely fine. He did nothing wrong. Performance was good. And his performance at Brighton last week was good as well. Does his performance against Everton, I've seen people saying that's the end of Emerson Royal's Tottenham career. No. Someone's performance against Everton does not define the end of someone else's career. And again, particularly say if St. Maximin's back in the Newcastle team, he might decide, shit, I've got to play Emerson against him, for example. So these things matter. It's not just who's playing well and who's not. He does think defensively first, I think, in many phases, and that will affect Conte's decision-making. And if Emerson comes back in the team, it also increases the possibility of Perisic staying in the team. They do match up. I don't think Perisic and Doherty against more difficult opponents is going to work so well. Also, the fact that Perisic did play restricted Doherty a little bit offensively.
Alrighty, let's go to Sunday. Aston Villa 0, Chelsea 2. Steven Gerrard's still got a job.
He's still got a job, and to be fair, for an hour they played really well.
Yeah, and I think he did say that, and even Potter said that in his post-match press conference as well, that Villa did give him a good game.
It wasn't
too easy.
It reminded me a lot, and we blew them away in the end, but it reminded me a lot of the game that we had at Villa when we won 4-0 in, it was either late March or early April, when Son got a hat-trick. Because Villa should have been about 3 up at half-time against us. And I'm not saying it was quite that against Chelsea, but if Villa had been in front at half-time, no Chelsea fan could have complained with the chances that they had. Kepa's made 6 saves in the first half, and 2 of them were genuinely world-class saves. Mm-hmm. And yet, once Chelsea got the second, a bit like Tottenham did that day, Chelsea didn't go on. which is understandable with the fixture schedule at the moment. Remember when Tottenham went there 1-4, they had 3 midweek afterwards. These things do matter. But Villa weren't at the races once it went 2-0. Heads had gone. It was the same thing like they were that day. I think they've gone, we played well here. Losing 2-0. Shit, we're done. And they do get a bit like that, Villa, when the heads go, I think, towards the end of the game. I wouldn't question them for effort, for work rate. I think they played really well. I think Watkins played left of the front three and gave Chelsea defensively a lot of problems in the first half. I thought the directness from the midfield into the front guys was really good in the first half. They got Chelsea turned a lot. They did well. They were losing at half time because Tyrone Mings has somehow managed to contrive a header that went backwards that you couldn't do even if you tried. Maybe it's come off the side of his head, or have you seen that still image, Suj? It's so good. It's probably my favourite photo of the season. It's literally so good. Even though it's a Chelsea goal, it's such a good photo.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and it's also photos like that can be deceptive sometimes, so you don't want to read too much into it. But I think that's
picture does tell
that does tell the story of what's actually happening.
I mean, there was nothing he was going to do to change the problem. Had he sprinted towards the ball, it wouldn't have made a blind bit of difference. Which is a shame, actually. I think he's been playing okay, Tyrone Mings, but he's had a terrible moment there.
But blink and they'll be in the relegation zone, Villa. I mean, their fixtures are not easy moving forward. Like Fulham away, Fulham are decent at the moment. They've been playing well and scoring goals. Brentford is a difficult game. Newcastle, United, Brighton, all of the if they only got picked up 3 or 4 points in the next 5, wouldn't surprise you. And then they really are looking over their shoulder.
Personal opinion to fix the attacking problems they have. I like that. The front three they played yesterday with Bailey, Watkins. I think you've got the natural finisher in Danny Ings. For me, in a fixture like this against Fulham on Thursday, drop one of that midfield three and put Buendia in there as a 10. Go to 4-2-3-1. Or even just get Ramsey higher as a direct runner. But I think utilise Buendia. I don't think Coutinho makes Villa's best 11, which says a lot for him at the moment. Villa have won 2 of their last 18 games against current Premier League games. In those 18 games, they've scored 13 goals. We're looking at nearly half a season's worth of data there. And we say against current Premier League teams because there's a couple of wins against Norwich in there and there's a win against Burnley as well. There's also a defeat against Watford, ironically, as well. But yeah, not good enough.
I really toyed with...
Them numbers aren't good enough anyway.
An alternative Chelsea defender as just a straight replacement for Reece James, like Cucurella or Chilwell were the two, or even Koulibaly.
You should have bought Raheem Sterling then.
I ended up not doing it because of rotation. Like Cucurella and Chilwell were the two that I wanted to go for. They both played though, so I could have picked either one. But I just decided
which
not to.
one plays Wednesday?
Well, this is it. That's why I ended up going towards Spurs and knowing Doherty plays because of Emerson's suspension. But yeah, look, Chelsea are doing all right now under Potter. You think that they're building some momentum and rhythm. Mason Mount is definitely well on the radar at his price. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yep, understand it. He created 5 chances against Wolves as well. He's been posting good numbers in all the games since Potter took over. That includes the Champions League games. It's worth saying his goals against Villa were his first of the season. So, yeah, he'd be on radar. Does he start at Brentford? Yes, probably. Does he start against Manchester United? Yes, probably. Well, almost certainly to start against Manchester United. Does he start at Salzburg in the Champions League? Choose it. I think you're always going to say probably, aren't you?
Yeah.
He could start all the games, don't get me wrong. He's a very fit lad as well. I'd just be a little bit cautious that Potter is not the sort of manager that will think, I desperately need him at Brentford. He'll think about recovery and things like that. I'd just be a little bit cautious. And I'm sure there's going to be some players that get rotated this midweek that we don't see coming. Mason Mount might be one of them. System-wise, so they played a back three with Chilwell as left wing back, and they started with Raheem Sterling at right wing back. They did it in the first game when they played Sterling left wing back against Salzburg. And he was really allowed to push on. He ended up into this kind of Trossard position where he actually scored in the game. The problem is when you've got Ben Chilwell, who's a player that I don't think you want defensively close to your goal because defensively he has weaknesses as well. The best of Chilwell is offensively, right? you're not getting the best of Raheem Sterling as a wing back either. And the fact that Watkins was playing that channel in the first half gave them so many problems. Chalobah was getting drawn out and getting done over, and then Villa were getting people into the box and really were giving Chelsea problems. So they changed it quite early in the game. So I'd seen, if you look at Chelsea's average positions in the game, you won't, honestly, if you didn't watch it, you won't have a clue what's happened. So Sterling started at right wing back. They were in big trouble. They changed it. They moved Loftus-Cheek to wing back, put Sterling left of a front three, and dropped Mason Mount in a bit deeper. Then at half-time, they changed it. They brought Koulibaly on and they brought Azpilicueta on. Azpilicueta played right wing-back. Koulibaly replaced Cucurella at left-sided centre-back. Cucurella didn't have a good game. What does it mean for Wednesday against Brentford? Well, it's complicated even more by the fact that Thiago Silva is an early doubt and is the obvious one to play as the middle of the back three. But he's another one who you'd have looked at that fixture schedule for them, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, when he ain't playing all of them. So it doesn't surprise me that Thiago Silva maybe wouldn't have played at Brentford anyway. That said, they've had problems with Brentford. In the 2 games last year, God knows how Brentford lost the home game 1-0, and obviously they beat Chelsea 4-1 at Stamford Bridge. Admittedly, at the time, Chelsea were in a really bad moment. I think, personally, my best guess would be to go back to a back 4 against Brentford. And you've probably got, I would guess, Azpilicueta and Cucurella as the fullbacks, and probably just have to be Koulibaly and probably Chalobah as the 2 centre-backs.
All right, James.
And therefore, Ben Chilwell doesn't play.
We have 4 games to get through and only 20 minutes, so they each get 60 seconds per game.
What?
Including Liverpool, Man City.
What are you talking about? Kepa is, for those who are going to wildcard in 13, is going to be in every wildcard team.
I was going to say post-World Cup, actually. I think he'll be in shitloads of teams as well. I don't know.
Probably.
I think, okay, look, 4.4 is cheap and he's Chelsea keeper. The fixtures, like you've mentioned, up until the World Cup, you could argue, is it worth it? But post-World Cup, like their fixtures are really good for Chelsea. Really good.
A brilliant stat for you, Suj. He's prevented 3.2 XG this season.
Prevented? Oh, so he's saved chances that have 3.2.
It's the best in the league.
That's pretty good.
He's only played 3 games.
And he scored a fair few points in FPL.
So, look, he's a player we've criticised massively over the last couple of years. Let's give credit where it's due. He's performing very well at the moment. The saves from Ramsey and... Oh, shit, who had the second one? The header he tipped over from Danny Ings were magnificent saves. Good. Leeds 0, Arsenal 1. I think this, if you're talking about XG, I think Leeds had nearly 2 and Arsenal about 0.7 or something. It's the first time Arsenal have been beat on XG this season. Okay, I thought you were going to go back to a bit longer than just this season. So therefore they should have 9 wins out of 10. By logic. Oh, I see what you mean. Well, that's what they have. I think a few of the Arsenal friends that I know are just like, yeah, we've robbed this and run away and let's just fucking go and move on to the next one because it's the first time that they've been outplayed in a long time. And it happens. You can't win every game, as City showed yesterday as well. Leeds had 61% of the ball in that second half yesterday. That was much more like, and I didn't watch all of this game, but it seems like that was much more like what we've spoken about a lot, particularly on the Sky podcast, about Arsenal retreating once they go ahead. That said, I just think Leeds are a pressing monster. And I've heard a lot of criticism of Leeds, particularly off the back of, I think people watched them at Palace last week. They started really well and then they did nothing in kind of the last hour of the game. Looks like they kept their intensity levels up much better in this game. It's not that long ago to beat Chelsea 3-0 at Ellen Road and fully deserved to beat them 3-0. I think they're an interesting side, actually. They're a pressing monster when they get it right, and that can be a real cauldron to play in. So as much as we can say, okay, Arsenal might have got away with it, it don't matter. Again, Gunners should be pretty pleased that they've got a big away win, kept a clean sheet. Okay, yes, there are fortuitous circumstances, particularly with the missed penalty. But that's it. You forget about it. You go away from home. You get your 1-0. You piss off and you go home. And Arsenal's performances this season have probably merited that they had a blip. A blip and against a good team. And a positive for them that they've still got the game won. I think it's performances like this, though, that still make the majority of people think they won't win the league. It's Haaland that makes me think they won't win the league. Listen, nobody's ever won 9 out of the first 10 and not won the league, mate. No, they have. It's 1 extra game now from last week. This is a different statistic now. Oh, okay. I didn't realise. So look, they've got a 4-point advantage on Man City and some other team who's not playing very well at the moment. They are absolutely in a title race. Are you level
with City now, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So shit, aren't we?
But you said it, not me.
And Arsenal have got fixtures coming up. Southampton and Forest, the next two. They can extend this. Obviously, they don't play in midweek, admittedly. But that could suddenly become 11 wins from 12. And at which point do you have... I mean, once they've got 33 points from 12 games, they're nearly halfway to Champions League qualification at that stage from 12 games. So Arsenal finishing top 4, I mean, there's like zero doubt about it at the moment. The only thing that derails them, and I'm not saying from winning the title, but I think finishing in, say, the top 3 in the worst case scenario right now, if, say, Liverpool properly recover, is injuries. Do they have the depth? What happens if they lose Saliba for a long period? What happens if they lose Thomas Partey for a long period, right? These are, through that spine, even Jesus up front, that's going to give them real problems. The 2 wide players playing great. Do you remember what we discussed last week? Saka in behind. Mm-hmm. There's more to come, I said. There you go. It's seen on the goal in the big moment. But yeah, they're doing really well at the moment.
Obviously, no one's buying any Arsenal this week.
And to be fair, we also don't know yesterday the impact of this power failure.
Yeah.
Because there's no way of knowing what the psychological impact of being ready to go and having to wait 40 minutes. And yes, you can say it's the same for both teams, but we don't know what the psychological impact today. You can't prepare for that. No. It's a weird circumstance. For Leeds, obviously really unlucky to lose the game. I think I'd keep an eye on them. There's nothing FPL-wise I'd go and buy this week, even in spite of the fact that it's Leicester away.
They did all right against Palace as well. Obviously, they went down to 10 men against Villa. You're like, it's one of those where it's like heroic defeats and heroic draws and stuff, and you can't keep doing that.
If they can bring that intensity to the King Power on Thursday, they'll beat Leicester.
Yep. I do agree with you on that, yeah, for sure. This fixture that has never had a 0-0, and that Man United have scored 3 goals in every home game.
It'd been very...
And you're right, all you were doing was stating facts.
It'd been a very high-scoring fixture in recent years, United
suddenly
against Newcastle.
Pops out a 0-0 from nowhere.
Shouldn't have, though. I mean, Marcus Rashford should have won the game at the end, and Callum Wilson should have had a penalty in the first half as well. So there were moments in this game which meant it could have gone either way. It seems like probably overall the draw was about right. No Christian Eriksen for Manchester United, illness. That's a little bit of a concern going into the game against Tottenham. For Newcastle, Joe Linton came back into the team, which is possibly a little bit harsh on Joe Willock, who I think has been doing quite well. Newcastle would have won. I think if you were free hitting this week, you are absolutely going with 3 of them. And I think Trippier and Wilson would be the first 2 on list.
Yeah.
If I didn't buy Mo Salah, Suj, I think I would captain Kieran Trippier this week. However, there's something to point out in his consistency. 77620857776.
No double-digit returns.
Not a single one. That said, he hasn't played at home to Everton. And an attacking return against Everton could easily be a 12 or a 15-pointer. Hence why buying Matt Doherty this week. So there are definitely people listening and watching this who are going to captain Kieran Trippier this week. And I don't hate it. I'd just be aware that the attacking returns seem to come in games where Newcastle concede goals as well. But you'd fancy him for a clean sheet, wouldn't you? I think if you were free hitting this week, you'd definitely go Wilson and Trippier. I certainly would.
I don't know if I would. Yeah, I mean, the bookies will probably make it statistically. They'll be favourites to keep a clean sheet. But the thing is, they've scored 3s and 4s and then leaked the odd goal. Admittedly, Trippier got one of those clean sheets because he got hauled off before they conceded, right? A 4-1 wouldn't surprise me, where they do well, they batter Everton, but then leak a goal. So, yeah, it's probably statistically favourable for them to keep a clean sheet, but it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, the other way if they didn't. I'm not going to be captaining Trippier, but yeah, I can see that. Ronaldo was a bit moody. Like, do you know...
What's the surprise?
And I want to extend this point out to Klopp and Guardiola as well, right? At some point, you've got to understand that people are watching, kids are watching. You have a public profile. You can't just behave like a petulant child sometimes. It's not acceptable. And he's a talisman. He's best player ever. And to play the game, you could argue. Scored more goals than anybody. You can't behave like that.
Did he do anything that bad?
I don't know. Show a bit of respect, I think.
Well, he thinks he's above that, doesn't he, in fairness?
This is the problem there, isn't it?
There is one Manchester United player that I would consider this week. And I'm sure he'll be in the thinking of other people who have similar problems to myself. And that is, despite not starting, is Marcus Rashford, 6.6. I don't like the fixtures coming up for him, and I'm also concerned that he's probably not 100% fit. But what have we said a few times with him? His hauls have actually come against Big Six opponents quite regularly, and it's Tottenham and Chelsea in the next two. So perhaps with him specifically, we shouldn't look at the fixtures so much. It's West Ham at home, Villa away, Fulham away, the last three. He's interesting at 6.6. That's all I'm saying.
Do you think he's got the shirt and he won't lose it?
Well, he's not in the team to get the shirt. From the little bits I've seen of the game yesterday, Jadon Sancho was a bit more impressive. I think despite Ronaldo's performances against Tottenham last year, I think Rashford will play through the middle on Wednesday.
Okay.
And if Martial's not back, I would expect him to do the same against Chelsea on Saturday. And therefore, you've got an OOP forward at a very, very reasonable price, who he's not that long ago, people were rushing to get into their team. So I'd just be conscious of Rashford. I think if I was free hitting this week, maybe one I'd take a punt on.
Okay.
At 6.6. I think for buy, it's probably going to be a no. But if someone who's perhaps seen more of United than I have recently really fancies it, I don't mind it.
Okay.
And if he plays on the left, he's up against Doherty, so he could well do well there as well.
Yeah.
Despite what everyone thinks about him, I still have desperate concerns about him defensively. But he's done well in the last two, the Doc.
Nice. Southampton 1, West Ham 1. So yeah, like I said, Southampton haven't kept a clean sheet in 16 games now and have slid into the relegation zone. You could hear boos at the end of the game again from the home fans, but I think sometimes you get these kind of boo just because you've lost as opposed to real outrage. But I don't think it has to. Well, they drew. Okay, they dropped points from a winning position.
Mate, listen, it's absolutely standard. At Tottenham now, no matter who we play, if we don't win, you'll hear the odd boo.
Yeah, it's like a dull rather than actual booing and wanting people out.
It's definitely not people who turn up every week.
No.
I'm fairly certain. It's people who have turned up, paid 70 quid and have not seen a winning football match. They're not happy about it. Boo! Yeah. Shut up. That said, obviously Matt had said to us on Clash of the Correspondents last week that he'd probably change now with Ralph Hasenhüttl. He thinks there's a number of players there not necessarily following direction. But I want to ask you, Suj, at half-time yesterday, Southampton had 7 shots on target and West Ham had none.
Yes.
So what happened and then what changed?
Well, if you look at the quality, this is where you've got to look at the quality of the chances. I think they started the game better than we did. And this has been a running theme with West Ham for a few weeks where opposition start the games faster. And the other thing is physicality. Like they were just more on it. Like Che Adams and Adam Armstrong and in the midfield, we're getting out-muscled. And this is like big, strong guys like Souček and stuff getting out-muscled. And you think, okay, we are going to be a bit lightweight because we're missing centre-back. So you've got Johnson and Creswell playing as makeshift centre-backs in the back three. And I think Che Adams and Armstrong knew that, and they were like, we'll get at them and get down the channels and try and give us a difficult game. And all of these shots on target came from in and around the edge of the box and were not bad chances, but also would have taken a good finish to beat Fabianski. Fabianski made all of these saves. You'd expect him to make all of these saves. If the striker puts a better effort in, they would have scored. Whereas West Ham had chances that Scamacca hits a perler from outside that just shaves past the post. He had another chance, just goes past the post. And actually, they were better hits than some of Che Adams's. But because they're not on target, they don't get registered as a shot on target. And you think, okay, well, where's the better quality of chances and who played the better football? I think the first half an hour, Southampton were giving us a good game. We weren't flowing. Second half, there wasn't even a contact. If you're talking about second half possession, I think we were in the high 60s and dominated the second half. They didn't do anything in the second half. 1 or 2 breakaway moments, but that was it. And we controlled the game. We should have got a second or third goal. Should have and didn't. But such as football.
Schumacher.
Yeah.
He looked brilliant on the highlights, mate.
Well, he's involved in everything. Everything's neat and tidy. He's very efficient, is what I would say. Like he's not very wasteful. Some players are quite wasteful. Left foot, right foot. He'll get in and around. If he's got the opportunity to get a shot off, he will get a shot off. Aggressive. He's a player. He's definitely a player.
And also more minutes yesterday. He played 87.
Is him and Paqueta. It's like every day, every match they play, they're getting 2%, 3%. But it's not like big leaps, but it's gradually more and more involved, more and more involved, more and more involved. We've got a striker there. That's he's a good player.
You've got a striker there that is absolutely on my radar, Suj.
Not with Liverpool away.
No, not this week. No, but the final four: Bournemouth at home, Manchester United away, Palace at home, Leicester at home.
3 home fixtures in the final 4.
It's that particularly. It's the 3 home games. Whereas you've got Jesus and Tony. They're on 4 yellows, and there's more away games over that period. For example, once you get to 13, I think Schumacher will be very, very popular for those on wildcard. When they sit down and they look at it, I think Schumacher will be really popular.
I'd pick him over Bowen if I was to pick one West Ham attacker right now, for example.
As well as if you wanted to take it out, so if people want a wild card and go with Saka, Foden, etc., Martinelli, etc., and you go, well, I do still want some West Ham coverage. Yes, for 1.3 or 1.4 cheaper at the moment, yes, I would favour Schumacher. That said, Bowen's record in home games is so good.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, look, both of us, we're basically through in Europe now, so he's going to rotate
tomorrow
in
night,
Europe.
Wednesday night at Liverpool. Give me my 2 points for Bowen now. Whatever.
I'll take the jinxing of that all day long.
Would you, if yeah, me too. Like, I hope he returns. Great. I hope you go to Liverpool and win, mate.
Me too.
Yeah. Would you consider Bowen as a Maddison replacement? Have you got Bowen or not?
Nah.
Would you consider that?
No.
I realised
too expensive.
I realised the timing's wrong because it's Liverpool away, and we've joked about them, and it might be that they open up more against West Ham on Wednesday. Bowen's away record, is it 17% of his Premier League goals been scored away from home? Doesn't make you feel like he'll return at Liverpool in the week. But could it be that it's the right move and it sets you for the last 4? Because if you intended to make that, say, Maddison to Bowen move at the weekend, there's no point waiting. You might as well take the 2 points from Bowen now, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's for a hit. I wouldn't do it for a hit.
If you're going to do... I wouldn't do it for a short term. If you're going to hold it till the end of the season, yeah, fine, I can understand that. But if I look at it, I'd rather have Saka. I'd rather have Foden. I'd rather have Mason Mount. There's plenty. If Kulusevski was fit, I'd rather have him. So if you're going to buy him and then move him on...
I disagree with those last 2.
Why? Because of the fixtures.
I think Bowen will outscore Mount and Kulusevski between now and the World Cup.
I'm not so convinced.
In one of those home games, he'll get a hold.
Not so convinced. People are going to want to know if Emerson's going to play against Liverpool. Well, look, Zuma's got a bug and Dawson's fit, so he might. I
realised I went all Dwayne Johnson on that.
Was that Dwayne Johnson?
Doesn't matter. It's a 1 point either way. Yeah. Like, just play him. What I've looked at is, so I could, in theory, I could take a -4 and do Salah and Zaha as I suggested. I could do another one, -8. I can get from Emerson to Virgil van Dijk. Definitely plays, not getting rotated, locked in. Even Forest, even though it's Saturday lunchtime, no qualms. They've got too many issues. He plays all the league games, no doubt. That worth a -4?
No,
of course it ain't. So Virgil van Dijk will post a 15-pointer, but is that worth a hit? Nah, it's not.
Southampton, I don't see anybody that's worth going to. The only thing I would say is Bella Kotchop went off injured, and that only decreases their chances of keeping clean sheets. So if you've got Solanke, I quite like the look of that midweek for you, James.
Some people will captain Dominic Solanke this week.
Yeah, fine. Because they were like 25 shots we had. We had a lot of opportunities. And that was only playing for 60 minutes of the game. So, yeah, I don't mind that.
I wouldn't be stunned if Southampton went there and won, though. Because interestingly now, the expectations changed. So because of Bournemouth's results and Southampton's performances, most people actually probably, I fancy Bournemouth to beat them at the moment. And the expectation might be difficult for Bournemouth to deal with, where actually now people on the outside think, I think you'll win this one. And that's probably the first time this season. Whereas each week we could go and think they'll get beat, Most of us probably think they'll beat Southampton with the form they're in at the moment. Saints get it right, they can go there and win. Of course they can.
Yeah.
In terms of FPL, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. No chance. Solanke wouldn't be my choice for captaincy this weekend. Well, he won't be.
No. A bit of VAR controversy again as well, but I think we'll cover that off in Tottenham later in the week, as Moisey was quite moany afterwards. But I think it's one of those where they go for you sometimes, they don't, just kind of, that's the swings and roundabouts of it.
I think technically by law it's not an illegal foul throw. The goal, it's really unfortunate. Again, there's nothing by law that you should cancel it.
Crossing over Bowen's path. I again agree.
You should have had.
I think it's more the penalty.
You should have had a penalty for the foul on Souček. Yes.
Yeah, and these frustrations do happen. Another game that had a bit of VAR.
It was more a penalty than the Dawson one last week.
Yeah,
and interestingly,
other ones were given at the weekend.
Interestingly, as well, Fulham obviously had the rough of the decisions against you. Arguably, might have had a bit of fortune against Bournemouth at the weekend.
Yeah. Let's cover off the last game. Liverpool 1, Man City 0. Again, VAR controversy in here. But if you're talking about kind of game weeks, had that Foden goal and Haaland foul not been given and Wilson's penalty been given, my game week would have looked quite different as well in this, because I own Foden and Wilson. But it's life. Deal with it. Move on. Salah versus Cancelo.
You are correct.
Yeah.
I want to come back onto the refereeing because I think it's more important to talk about the game in the first instance. Liverpool deserve massive credit because we've battered them. We've all had a laugh at them and stuff. The back four were excellent and they started deeper. This hopeful expectation that there'd be space in behind for Haaland never materialised at any point in the game. They did start off deeper, so it shows that they can do it. They can adjust. I thought James Milner did really well at right back. He got terrorised in the same fixture he ended up playing there last season. Van Dijk and Gomez were very good. Robertson was very solid, considering he's probably not 100% fitness either. Salah through the middle. He's obviously interesting and exciting. I think Jota's obviously picked up an injury at the end of the game. We don't know the severity yet. But the fact he went off on the stretcher suggests he probably won't play on Wednesday. So what did they do with that? Because suddenly with Diaz out as well, they're without players who could play wide and be comfortable. I just think, to be honest, at the moment, he'll probably just play Carvalho out there.
He's been all right, Carvalho. He's a good player.
I think if they want to stick with this where it's basically 4 attacking players to allow Salah to play centrally, then I think probably Elliott stays in the team on the right because he can tuck in. He's a little more defensively minded. Plus, of course, Liverpool have had major problems on the right-hand side defensively. And he will give a little bit more protection and Mo doesn't have to worry about it. Salah and Núñez I don't feel like works. So I think Firmino probably stays in the team at the moment. Or when Diaz comes in the team, Salah is going to go back wide. That's how it would seem. But I think, I said to you previously, concerns about Salah starting at Forest in 13. I think with the injury issues at the moment and with Egypt not at the World Cup, I think he probably just keeps playing, I should imagine, at the moment. So there's that as well. Whereas I was concerned last week thinking, tell you what, I'm not sure he starts at Forest in 13. At the moment, as long as the recovery is okay, I imagine he probably would. And who knows, we might be sitting here on Friday and go, should captain Salah at Forest rather than Haaland against Brighton. Now, I don't see that personally at the moment because I think Brighton will still give up enough chances. They're not going to be as stingy under De Zerbi as they were beginning to become under Potter. But certainly interesting. I think Núñez showed at the end of the game that he's still a work in progress. I spoke last week about his movement top end being outstanding, but there's aspects of his game that I think are still behind. The fact he doesn't get his head up for that pass at the end, I mean, Salah should be hauling because he should have another one-on-one. But good from Liverpool, and who knows, they may well go on a run now. Would it surprise you if they won every game between now and the World Cup?
Liverpool going on a run will never surprise me.
I wouldn't rule them out of the title. I honestly wouldn't, despite the start, because they they have the capability to do what Arsenal have done and win 9 in 10. They are very capable of doing that, almost irrespective of fixtures. Guardiola. So, I don't know what's gone through his mind here. Well, most of us don't often. But I just think you're playing against an opponent who you often struggle with and are in a bad moment, and they're absolutely flying. Why have you changed? Why does he do it in the biggest games at the most important times? Like in Champions League games, it's cost them so many times. What is it? Listen, I watched the whole game like I'm sure many did. I'm sure many people couldn't tell you what system Man City played yesterday, because I would probably describe it as like 3-2-3-1, roughly, with Foden and Cancelo as wingers rather than wing backs. But certainly Cancelo had a real responsibility to get back to right back without the ball, whereas Foden didn't have the same responsibility to get back to left back. Part of that was because they played with this lopsidedness where I think Gundogan played as kind of the left 10 in the half spaces. Then that changed later in the game where he swapped with Bernardo Silva, and they kept trying to overload that side, and yet the distances between Bernardo and Gundogan and Foden were massive that they couldn't hurt Liverpool in the first half. In the second half, it was better. I don't know if they were trying to overload that side to get the switch of play, to get De Bruyne and Cancelo at Robertson and Van Dijk, and then open up Haaland's movement there. I don't know. But I just think if City had played in their normal system, they'd have won the game. It's genuinely what I think. And I don't know why you've overcomplicated it and give the opposition such a chance. What I didn't like as well was City started with like Gundogan really high. All the problems that Liverpool have had is teams breaking on them quickly. So it's not walking through Liverpool and causing them issues. It's actually Liverpool getting too many bodies forward and now quickly teams break on them. And you look at City in the game against Manchester United and the goals they scored, and you think this is so ideal. So can you remember a point in the game where they got like De Bruyne running at them? So it felt like part of the tactical structure was to open up space to De Bruyne, but they never really got it to him. So I think they just played into Liverpool's hands. They gave them too many clear opportunities on the break. So you could look at City and go, yeah, 70% possession. It's 76% in the second half. Liverpool had 5 big chances to City's 1. So on the XG, Liverpool piss them, despite the fact City have dominated the game.
Yeah,
and Liverpool scored at a period where City was so dominant. How do you end up leaving? You can say, it's from a set piece. Don't leave yourself with Cancelo one-on-one with Mo Salah. You're asking for it. Alisson's now got attacking returns in his last 4 seasons.
Nice.
3 assists, and the one season he didn't assist in, he scored in.
Yeah,
it's not bad. I just think City on the system, I just think got it wrong. But on a different day, Foden scores.
Yeah,
they win the game. On the refereeing, so I know there was a lot of talk yesterday about, this is a better product, yada, yada, yada. Actually, I thought that the last 15 minutes of the game, all the quality disappeared and it just became a mess because the two teams realised they could kick fucking lumps out of each other. There was a moment in the second half, and I'm pretty sure it was after Salah scored, but it might have been just before, where Bernardo Silva got clearly pushed over. 2 hands in the back, he's shielding the ball, he's got his back to goal, 2 hands clearly in the back, it's a definite free kick. It's almost like referees have decided like pushes don't exist as fouls anymore. So what happened then is, for example, Bernardo Silva's gone, well, this is ridiculous. I've clocked what you're doing now. I might as well go away and just have people for the next 15 minutes or so. I mean, the one that he then fouled Salah, in what world, so where Klopp's obviously, he shouldn't react like that, clearly. But it is a free kick, and I can understand the anger. Yeah. Seriously.
I mean, you talk about Arsenal Leeds, Gabriel, right? That red card that got overturned where he's fallen.
Yeah, it's not a red card.
Bamford's barged him over. Okay, when he's fallen over and kicked his leg out, but it depends. As a VAR, do you then say, well, Bamford's pushed him over, so it's a foul against
So that's what they decided, yeah.
But this is it, right? The ref didn't do anything originally. It was against Gabriel, not against Bamford. And so that's all right.
My issue with the disallowed goal, which I think if you just take it on the decision, does Haaland pull Fabinho?
Yeah.
Yes. Apparently, by the way, they would have also disallowed the goal for Haaland's challenge on Alisson as he had 2 hands on the ball. I disagree with that. But if you just look at it on the face of the Haaland pulling Fabinho, does he pull his shirt? Yes. Should that be a free kick? Yes. The problem is there are so many incidents in games that are getting left go, and that yet you want to re-referee the one because that impacts on a goal. So it was very similar to the incident where it was Eriksen against United and Arsenal when Martinelli scored, where, yeah, it's a foul, but you're letting so many go. So you referee the game in a certain way, but because you're showing it back on the TV, you act in a different way. No. I think it was a really, really bad refereeing performance. And I think most people say it was really good. I think we are getting into a situation where a game like that is really intense and we're letting too many go. Someone's going to get very seriously hurt. Very serious. It's gone too far. Where there are obvious fouls I'm watching every single week. And I'm not saying there's a bias to one team. There are fouls I'm seeing in every single game I watch which are being let go, and they're clear fouls. And it's happening across the board, and someone's going to get hurt. We want physicality in our game, but we also want a free kick to be a free kick.
Agreed.
And there were a couple yesterday
which get
players really angry, and they see red mist, and you're going to have a problem.
There was a couple in that. There was one human. Where Perot pulled back Soufal, and you're like, it's clear as day as a foul. You pulled him down to the ground and it doesn't get given, and then the foul 2 seconds later that does get given, and you're like, it's consistency. I want to see fair consistency, and it just frustrates the hell out of people.
Well, there is consistency in the sense that
consistently bad,
yeah, and we all want to see. I think the majority of us do want to see a physical game, but I do want, when there's clear and obvious free kick, a foul's a foul, yeah. Whether it's a push or a pull or whatever, to then decide to referee. Oh, I'm going to referee the game like this, and then because there's a goal scored, actually we'll referee this decision differently. Logically, that just feels completely wrong to me. So, on the face of it, yeah, right to disallow the goal, but so many incidents like that just being let go every single game.
Cool. We have a quite tight turnaround, midweek games this week and what have you. So, the content this week's going to be a little bit different. Do you want to tell people what they got, James? I'm just flicking through the Twitter questions here, and
we've covered everything.
Pretty boring. It's like, who should I get for Maddison? Basically,
I'm probably going Zaha. I haven't decided yet, but I think, and to be honest, a lot of people will already have Zaha. I think Trossard as a one game to chain it on to Saka or Foden at the weekend is reasonable. I do think he'll probably start. I think if you want a real outside one, Marcus Rashford.
Okay. We'll just do the Twitter questions and you can wrap up the content to wrap up the show. Will Liz Truss make it to game week 13? You've seen the video of her versus a lettuce at the moment.
No.
I think it's the Daily Star or one of these red top newspapers has got a video on their YouTube channel. It's a live stream of a photograph of Liz Truss and a lettuce, and the lettuce is rotting, right? Because it's just been left there. They're just debating whether the lettuce will rot and disappear or she will lose her job.
Will she be remembered as a Prime Minister?
It's a madness, whatever.
What's the shortest reign ever? Do you know?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
She's it.
Yeah, difficult. We had a few political questions in asking about Liz Truss.
Okay.
We've got a question coming in from Ron Mukherjee. Will I sell Leandro Trossard before game week 12 so that we can all bring him in and captain him against Forest? No, I will not be selling him unless £25,000 is deposited in my bank account. Like I've asked Brighton fans, he won't do it. I won't sell him. Tough.
So you're as it stands, you're going Wilson captain.
As it stands, I'm going
over Trossard.
Captain. But what you mentioned there about moving on Foden and getting him back, because the value is always a concern. I think I might be able to sell him and buy him at the same price because he may go down this week. Might be a case of going to Salah. I bought Salah yesterday in Sky, for example, and I'll captain him.
I bought Foden in Sky yesterday. Robbed. Well, you were robbed in FPL. I was robbed in Sky. For any Sky Fantasy players, Wednesday will be your podcast for that. That's nothing too much on the questions, James. No non-footballing food-related questions either. I think most people obviously got very similar dilemmas this week. A lot of our listeners will have Maddison. I think it probably is a move. I think you have to remember that it's circumstantial. And for most people this week, it's not worth taking hits.
No, agreed. I'd rather ride with 9 or 10.
And I think 9 or 10 is okay. In my case, I think it's one where De Bruyne to Salah, like I said, we're going to buy Trossard instead and be stubborn about it. It doesn't make sense. It's the right call to get him in. Maddison's fifth yellow is what's influenced it massively, because I would have captained Maddison this week, I'm pretty sure. And the plan for Maddison was to get rid in 13. So there's nothing to wait for. It's either going to be a hit now or it's going to be a hit at the weekend. It might as well be the hit now when I know that the player I'm bringing in is I need in terms of a body. But I think for most people, if you've got 8-9 this week, don't stress. I really believe that the free hit will be so much better used later in the season. I know there are some that are going to do it. Like, good luck. Play it your way as ever.
Indeed. What have they got to look forward to the rest of the week, listeners, James?
It's a clash of the correspondents tomorrow and Thursday. So Newcastle and Everton with Simon Bibby and Sean Norton. We'll have that out for you in the morning early. Obviously, deadline stream is at 5 o'clock tomorrow on the YouTube channel. Sky Wednesday, Clash of Correspondents again Thursday. Johnny Pringle and Sam Murray previewing Manchester City and Brighton ahead of game week 13. You and I will be doing this again on Friday to review all the midweek games, and deadline stream is Saturday morning 10 a.m. Our Patreon content this week is we've got Q&A today. We've got preview shows for game weeks 12 and 13 tomorrow and Friday. Wednesday is Tottenham. We'll be talking about Google a little bit, and Thursday's quiz.
Lovely jubbly. Listeners, make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to the pod. If you want to support the show, it's patreon.com/planetfpl. And we'll be back at you tomorrow. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck. Suj thinks he'll be back tomorrow, but he won't.
Nah.
The show
will be back tomorrow.
Play it your way. Cue music, please, man child.